Hello everybody. It's been a long time since I've posted a video. It's been since, I think, September of last year, 2015. And so I just wanted to give an update. Somewhere around last August, I was looking into the possibility of changing jobs, and I came across something about teaching overseas, and so I looked into it, and I decided to pursue that. I enjoy traveling and teaching, so I thought, well, this would be a pretty cool way to do both of those things. And I found that there's a lot of opportunities for teaching abroad, and especially if you teach English as a foreign language, which I don't. Not exactly. So anyway, I looked into it, and I looked at a few different options, because when I was looking, it was end of August, middle of August, end of August, since the school year was about to start pretty soon. A lot of jobs have already been filled, so I didn't have a ton of options, but I did get a couple of offers, and I decided to accept a job teaching in Kazakhstan. So starting in October, the beginning of October, I have been since then a teacher in Kazakhstan teaching high school math. So since I started looking into this and then applying and getting ready to leave, I've been so busy I didn't have time to do much else. And then when I got here, it's just so much to do, and it was a bit overwhelming, so I haven't really had time to do any videos, unfortunately. And then over break, we had some time off for the holidays, but then during that time I decided to do some traveling. I was actually in Italy. I'd never been to Italy before, so that was my first trip to Italy. So I didn't really have time to do any videos while I was on vacation either. So anyway, I'm back in Kazakhstan now, and I just wanted to do a quick update here instead of putting it off longer. So, a little bit about where I am and what I'm doing. The city that I'm in is called Aktau. It's in the western part, basically the westernmost point of Kazakhstan. It's right on the Caspian Sea. It's pretty big, relatively speaking. It's about 200,000 people. And there's a lot of oil and gas industry here. The city is, it's interesting, it's very unique. It's sort of, I guess, I don't know how I would describe it as rural, but not exactly. I guess it's probably urban for Kazakhstan, but um, Kazakhstan was an old Soviet country, so you still see that influence here. All the buildings and stuff are very Soviet looking. They're still from a long time ago, the 1950s. And so they're just sort of these dull, old-looking rectangular buildings, even if they have been, many of them upgraded on the inside. But one of the most interesting things I think about the city is that the streets have no names, just like in the U2 song. The city is broken up into districts, micro-districts or micro-regions. So each district has a number, and then within each district, every building has a number. So your apartment building has a number, or an office building or business has a number. And then if there are apartments or offices within that building, then each one of those has a number. So your address in Aktau is 3 numbers. So you might be micro district 5, building 12, and then apartment 25 or something like that. So your address would be 51225. So how do you find where is it micro-district and where each building is? Well, you just know because you've lived here a long time. Or you're like me and you don't know, and you just rely on other people and taxis to figure out where everything is. A lot of people travel using taxis, except here, many taxis are not actually marked. So there are some marked taxis. There's a popular taxi company. But what most people do is to just stand on the side of the road and just put your hand out, and a taxi will come up and pull over and stop. But it might not be marked as a taxi. In fact, it might not even be a taxi. It might just be somebody who is willing to give you a ride in exchange for some money. So this is a very common practice in Aktau. And that's how we get around. We actually, as expats, as foreigners, we're not allowed to buy a car. I think you have to live here for 5 years or something before you can get a license. So we take taxis to work and home, and to the store. Well, we do a lot of walking. One cool thing I think about here is there's a lot of small stores, restaurants, and stuff all over the place. So you can walk to everything really that you need. For example, in my apartment building, on one end of it, there's a little restaurant. And then just outside my apartment building, there's a really, really small little shop, sort of like a little convenience store. And I'm planning to put some video behind this audio recording that I'm making. And so, to be honest, this isn't really scripted or planned out, so that things might not match up, but at some point in the video, I think you'll see my apartment building and this little convenience store, and you'll see somebody outside hailing a taxi. So anyway, yeah, there's a lot of these little stores. In fact, the next building over, inside that building, the apartment building, at one end of it, there's another little convenience store. And then across the street from me is a larger grocery store. Not as big as the big grocery stores that we have back in the US, but still pretty big. It has your normal stuff, a meat section, a deli section, cheese, dairy area, and a little bakery section, and everything you need, it's there. A lot of the same brands that we find in the US or in Europe are here. So I can walk across the street, get everything I need, or even just walk kind of outside my door to a little convenience store, get what I need there. I don't drink the water from the tap. I don't know how exactly good or bad it is, but people advise me not to drink it, so I always buy drinking water. Although I do use the tap water for brushing my teeth and showering and all that. You will see in one of the videos that I post or include here, the hot water in some parts of the city is a little bit dirty. It was a lot dirty, as you can see in the video, and it's cleaned up a bit since then. But it's still not quite as clean as the cold water, so. But it's usable. Hopefully it'll clear up as the year goes on. What else about Aktau? There's some entertainment here. There's movie theaters. Unfortunately, they don't have any movies in English, and they don't even have any movies with English subtitles. So that kind of sucks. And there are a lot of restaurants. There's some bars. But overall, there's not a whole lot of entertainment options, at least that I've found. In other parts of Kazakhstan, they get a lot more snow, so if you're into skiing and snowboarding, stuff like that, I'm sure there's plenty of that, but not so much here in Aktau. I think because, I guess, we're on the Caspian and just the location in general being more southern and west, there's not a lot of snow. This area of Kazakhstan is very dry, sort of desert, I guess. And so even though it does get very cold, and it does get freezing cold, there's very little snow. What else? So my apartment, I think I'll include some video of my apartment. It's pretty nice. It's all the apartment buildings are up to, I think, 5 stories, and I'm on the, what am I, on the 4th story, and I was told that back when all these buildings were built, in the, I think it was in the 1950s, in the Soviet era, maybe 60s, when they were built, there was a rule about apartment buildings that had 6 or more stories had to have an elevator. So most of these buildings have 5 stories, and so there's no elevator. You can see in some of the video the infrastructure is not super great. The roads and everything are pretty decent, but then the sidewalks and areas around buildings and stuff like that, not really well kept. A lot of dirt areas that are uneven, broken pavement, holes even in the ground. I don't know what they were used for, and sometimes they're not covered. there's also all these pipes that just run all over the place, just kind of a couple inches off the ground. And I don't know if they carry water or gas or nothing, but you have to be really careful because you'll just trip over them if you're not paying attention. And sometimes they're in really inconvenient places. It's very strange. And one of them did actually get me once. But I'll have to find out what those are all about. And maybe I'll post another video or slideshow later too, because I have some video and I have some pictures. Anyway, I don't know. But so the city is interesting. The language. People in Kazakhstan, because it was former Soviet Union, speak Russian. And there's also Kazakh. And in my area, this western area, southwestern area, supposedly Kazakh is more popular than maybe in other parts of the country, or more widely used, I should say. So I do run into both Russian and Kazakh. The Kazakh alphabet is different. It's like the Russian alphabet, but they have more letters. So I'm trying to pick up a little bit of Russian. I definitely need to learn more. It can be challenging to go out and about and go to restaurants and stores, but you'd be surprised how well you can communicate with just pointing and certain common words, or the few English words that they know, the few Russian words that I know. And definitely Google Translate has been very helpful. Some restaurants do have English menus, but a lot of them don't. The food here is not impressive. A lot of sort of meat, bread, sour cream, and dill, and cabbage. That kind of sums up the cuisine here. I mean, I'm oversimplifying a bit, but we have managed to find some decent restaurants. So we just kind of keep going to the same places over and over. What else? The food, the language. People are people everywhere you go. People are relatively friendly. I don't get to interact much because of the language barrier. But when I do talk with people, either in stores or restaurants, they're generally very friendly. And the school, so the people I work with at school are all pretty great. So there's a system of high schools in Kazakhstan that are for sort of high-achieving students. So they're public, but they have to pass tests to get into this particular system of schools. So the students are really good. And the students learn in their native language for some classes. So they can learn in Russian or Kazakh. And then they're also learning English. And in theory, some classes are taught in English. But in my particular case, what we're doing is co-teaching. So I'm teaching math, as I said, grades 9 and 11. And so we're actually co-teaching. So every class, there's the local teacher, the Kazakh teacher, who teaches in either Russian or Kazakh. And then I work with several different local teachers to co-teach with them. So I will give some instruction in English, and the local teacher gives their instruction in Russian or Kazakh. And the students, their English varies. Some of them are quite good at English, others still trying to catch up, but they do, of course, have English classes, English as a foreign language. It's especially challenging for me because the teachers, the Kazakh teachers that I work with, don't speak English, or, they speak very little English, and they're trying to learn English too. So we're supposed to plan lessons together and teach lessons together, and we can't really communicate. So, how does that work, you might wonder? Yeah, I wonder the same thing. Well, we just sort of do the best we can. And as the year goes on, we do get a little bit better at it, and I learn a little bit of their language, and they learn a little bit of English, and I think it's sort of an experiment, at least it is for me. So maybe in a few months I'll give an update on how things are going. So yeah, it's very interesting. And there are international teachers, so I'm an international teacher for math, or international teachers for other subjects as well. And it's the same thing. They co-teach with the local teachers. So it's a really interesting experience. And there's a lot of really good things about it, even though it is very challenging. And of course it's difficult to be away from everyone that I know back home. It's a 1-year contract, so once the school year is over, in theory I could continue, or I could look for a job teaching in another country, or I could just go back home and go back to what I was doing before, or who knows. But I wanted to go and do something sort of a little bit different and crazy, and live somewhere else and experience another culture, another country. And I didn't know anything about Kazakhstan before I got here, for the little bit that I could find on the internet and blogs and stuff. So this is definitely a learning experience, and who knows what I'll do next year. I really hope that I can find time to make more math ASMR videos this year. And I have a lot of ideas of things that I want to do, and I have a lot of requests from people as well. And I'm hoping to get to as many of those as I can. If you're curious, the math that we're teaching this year for grade 9, we've covered solving quadratic equations and equations that can be rewritten or expressed in quadratic form. We're getting into graphing quadratic equations next, and it's also covered geometry, so properties of parallelograms, rectangles, trapezoids, rhombuses, etc., and quadrilaterals in general, and properties of those, solving problems with those, proofs involving those, and also properties of circles, arcs, tangents, chords, angles, etc. And in 11th grade, it's kind of interesting combination of things. So the very beginning of the year, I think actually, because I arrived in the beginning of October, so I missed the first month, and I think they did derivatives, because when I got here they were doing integrals, but they didn't really do much conceptual stuff. It was more of just, here's a polynomial, here's how you find the integral. So they did derivatives and integrals of polynomials, and what else? They did some sort of review, a little bit of quadratics, but like more difficult stuff than what the grade 9 was doing. There's something called Vietta's formula, or Vietta's theorem. It's a way to solve, well, you can use it to solve quadratic equations, or to just kind of find various things with the roots of quadratic equations. Anyway, they really like that here. It's very big in the curriculum, which is interesting because I never really learned that particular theorem when I was in school. We just did other methods. So it's interesting. You think, math is math everywhere, but some places, some schools or countries, cultures will really emphasize certain things, and others will emphasize other things. And another topic that we covered in grade 11 is solid geometry, or sometimes called stereometry, which involves points, lines, and planes in three-dimensional space. So using axioms, such as through any 3 points, there's one plane, well, any 3 non-collinear points. Anyway, we don't have to get into the details right now, but so the axioms of solid geometry and simple proofs, theorems using the axioms, and then properties, finding distance between points and lines, points and planes, lines and planes, etc., in space. So that's interesting, because that's not something I really did a lot of either when I was in school. Two-dimensional geometry, yeah, but not so much the three-dimensional stuff. At least not that kind of thing. So that's interesting. That was really challenging for me too, because it's a lot of words. Given a plane and a point not on the plane, prove blah blah blah, or stuff like that. There's a statement about lines and points and planes. Is it true or false? So, because there was so much wording in the questions, it was really difficult, because the questions in the textbooks are in Russian and Kazakh, and I don't read Russian or Kazakh. So I was glad when that unit was over. Anyway, now we are moving on to trigonometry. And so they've done some basic trigonometry before, previous years. Now we're getting into inverse functions and solving trigonometric equations. And I think eventually this year we'll get into some statistics and combinatorics, which I'm looking forward to. I like combinatorics and probability. anyway, so that's the math side. But if you guys have any questions about anything, I imagine some people will. I've left out some things, I'm sure, that I forgot to mention about the city, about Kazakhstan, about the language, about the school. Please feel free to post some comments, ask questions. Maybe I can even put together a second follow-up video about it. So that's where I've been, and that's what I've been doing, and I really will try to make time to make some more videos, math videos, over the next couple of months. And thanks for continuing to post comments, and I guess that's about it. Happy New Year, and hope your holidays were good. And I look forward to posting again soon. Alright, thanks.